Welcome to this afternoon's webinar. Just like to introduce myself. I'm Amanda Hornby, and before I worked at the BDA, I supported a variety of SEN students in secondary school. So I've got about 14 years experience in that. I've did some study while I was working in the secondary school, and so now I'm a dyslexia specialist tutor. I can assess for access arrangements and I can diagnose dyslexia as well. This is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to give you an understanding of what dyslexia is. We will look at the emotional toil of being dyslexic. We will also cover working in a supportive environment, looking at inclusive strategies before finally how the BDA can help in the future. We would like to know who our audience is, so we've got a quick poll for you. If you can click the one that applies mostly to you, are you a manager or line manager? Are you an employer? Are you a dyslexic employee or something else? Um, so what I will do is I'll just give you a couple of seconds now to click the one that is most applicable to you, and we'll just wait for the results. Just give it a couple more seconds there. And this is our audience. We have got 26% as line manager, 7% as employers, we have 32% as dyslexic employees, and 42% as others. So welcome everybody. It's nice to know who our audience is. So what I want to do today is, although it's only an hour, I want to try and give you an understanding of dyslexia and what it is and how it affects people, as much as I can within the time frame. I want to start off on a positive note though, because being dyslexic can be a very positive experience with the unique skills that you can bring. There is around about 10% of our UK population who are diagnosed with dyslexia, which is around about 6.5 million people. There is, depending on which study you read, however, some suggest it might be up to 20% because there will be a section of our society who are undiagnosed and who are just classed as having literacy difficulties. It does affect both men and women, and there is a genetic link. So if you feel that there is, if it could be you, have a look at your wider family tree, and have a look at the different varying levels of dyslexia within your wider family tree. Staying on the positive note, though, I want to just show you this array of famous people. Now, all of these people are known to be dyslexic or neurodiverse. And the message here is that regardless of whether you are dyslexic or not, you can still be incredibly successful in whichever niche area that you'd like to go into. And it could be that you want to be a politician, or you want to be an inventor, or you are working as a public speaker, you might be an actor, actress, that kind of thing. These individuals are incredibly skilled in whichever niche area that they want to go into. And the message is that we need a really good balance of dyslexic and non-dyslexic thinkers within our organizations, because they really balance out the skill sets. This is a real life success story. This gentleman here on the left is Rob Hicks, and he is the director of Sea Life within the Merlin Entertainment Group. He started off as a marine biologist, and he used his dyslexia thinking skills and his storytelling skills to be able to become successful within his journey and through his career. He says that he has thrived professionally despite his dyslexia. He's had some very incredible challenges in his early years. He says his dyslexia affects him because he finds it difficulty to process sounds and recognize words, but he has this innate determination to help him find solutions within the organization that he works in and to become successful within that. Uses his innovative thinking to connect those complex issues. He derives very creative solutions. And he describes himself as a really good storyteller. So when he is presenting, he will present to audiences, but he uses his storytelling skills as a presenter. Instead of reading from a PowerPoint, he would use his storytelling skills and use his imagery to be able to tell what it is that he needs to present. He says he's had a fantastic support network with regards to his close family, his wife and his children, but also with the internal group within Merlin Entertainment Group and Sea Life in particular. So we can be incredibly successful being dyslexic. When we think about the strengths of dyslexia, we can like to think about a cluster of some of these strengths that I'm going to talk about now. Sometimes you will, they will have the ability to visualize, very often in 3D. There are a lot of designers and architects and builders who can see in almost like 3D, and they can move the image around in their head. They will have very practical and problem solving skills, very good lateral thinking, being able to see the bigger picture. Very good visual spatial awareness, sometimes looking at data on spreadsheets, for example. That creativity, the ability to think outside of the box. Often very good verbal communication. And I noticed that when I was in secondary school. I would be able to have these fantastic conversations with the young people that I supported, and yet there was very little on the page. And so consequently, they were assumed that they were unintelligent because they were having that difficulty of getting what is going on in their head onto the written form. And so the way that they made up for it is in that really good verbal communication. And also, what you may notice is with many dyslexic individuals, they will have that high motivation, that persistence. And this is where the masking comes in. Sometimes those who are not dyslexic will not realize the challenges that these individuals face every day because they have their own strategies. You won't see the amount of effort that it takes to actually be able to complete a task. I used to see that in school. My dyslexic learners would be able to only produce a half a page of writing. But what teacher doesn't see is that has taken probably 3 times longer than everybody else. And yet they would still be criticized on it because it's not enough work. So they will have this persistence. They do not want really what other people want to see is that they can't achieve the same as everybody else. So bear that in mind as well. These are some statistics that we need to consider really as a society. There's a general agreement. There's around about 30% of our prison population who are diagnosed with dyslexia. Now consider that as with the general population as 10% is a huge jump. Again, depending on which study you read, some suggest it's up to 60% because of that section of the population who are undiagnosed and just classed as having literacy difficulties. And we need to question what kind of messaging these individuals have received all the way through their young life and all the way through into adulthood. Many students can't engage within the traditional way of teaching with our national curriculum. And so they find themselves completely disengaged and on the school to prison pipeline. We need to consider what kind of messaging we are giving to our young people as they grow up. On the other side of the scale, however, there is huge success with being dyslexic. 40% of self-made millionaires are found to be dyslexic. And so we need to consider as well what kind of messages has that group of individuals had? Have they been supported? Have they been told that, okay, you might have literacy skills, but however, you still have these unique skills in another area? And so, we need to consider all of us as being educators, how as a society can we influence these statistics? Are we able to pass on these positive messages so that our young people don't get disengaged within our education system? I've got a quick video to show you, and I will go into a little bit more detail after the video and explain what is dyslexia. But this is a really good visual to illustrate what dyslexia is. I'm sorry about these adverts, I can't get rid of them.
Start with a sketch. How do you want the future to look?
It will play in a moment.
Because right now, it's just an idea. Where it goes is up to you.
Here we go.
Take a moment to read the following. How was that? Frustrating? Slow? What were those sentences about? They're actually a simulation of the experience of dyslexia, designed to make you decode each word. Those with dyslexia experience that laborious pace every time they read. When most people think of dyslexia, they think of seeing letters and words backwards, like seeing B as D and vice versa, or they might think people with dyslexia see saw as was. The truth is, people with dyslexia see things the same way as everyone else. Dyslexia is caused by a phonological processing problem, meaning people affected by it have trouble not with seeing language, but with manipulating it. For example, if you heard the word cat and then someone asked you, remove the C, what word would you have left? At. This can be difficult for those with dyslexia. Given a word in isolation like fantastic, students with dyslexia need to break the word into parts to read it. Fan, tas, tick. Time spent decoding makes it hard to keep up with peers and gain sufficient comprehension. Spelling words phonetically like S-T-I-K for stick and F-R-E-N-S for friends is also common. These difficulties are more widespread and varied than commonly imagined. Dyslexia affects up to 1 in 5 people. It occurs on a continuum. One person might have mild dyslexia, while the next person has a profound case of it. Dyslexia also runs in families. It's common to see one family member who has trouble spelling, while another family member has severe difficulty decoding even one-syllable words like catch. The continuum and distribution of dyslexia suggest a broader principle to bear in mind as we look at how the brains of those with dyslexia process language. Neurodiversity is the idea that because all our brains show differences in structure and function, we shouldn't be so quick to label every deviation from the norm as a pathological disorder, or dismiss people living with these variations as defective. People with neurobiological variations like dyslexia, including such creative and inventive individuals as Picasso, Muhammad Ali, Whoopi Goldberg, Steven Spielberg, and Cher, clearly have every capacity to be brilliant and successful in life. So here's the special way the brains of those with dyslexia work. The brain is divided into 2 hemispheres. The left hemisphere is generally in charge of language and ultimately reading, while the right typically handles spatial activities. fMRI studies have found that the brains of those with dyslexia rely more on the right hemisphere and frontal lobe than the brains of those without it. This means when they read a word, it takes a longer trip through their brain and can get delayed in the frontal lobe. Because of this neurobiological glitch, they read with more difficulty. But those with dyslexia can physically change their brain and improve their reading. With an intensive multisensory intervention that breaks the language down and teaches the reader to decode based on syllable types and spelling rules, the brains of those with dyslexia begin using the left hemisphere more efficiently while reading, and their reading improves. The intervention works because it locates dyslexia appropriately, as a functional variation in the brain, which naturally shows all sorts of variations from one person to another. Neurodiversity emphasizes this spectrum of brain function in all humans, and suggests that to better understand the perspectives of those around us, we should try to not only see the world through their eyes, but understand it through their brains.
Whoops, I pressed escape too many times. Hang on a sec. Here we go. So let's have a look at the dyslexic and non-dyslexic brains in a little bit more detail. We know, don't we, that with child development studies, that the more that we integrate with children from birth, that the more that the brain develops. And what we can do is we can have a look at the differences when we are learning to read and write with the dyslexic and non-dyslexic brain. So notice that the reading systems of the brain is on the left hemisphere. We have these three areas that are responsible for all of these literacy skills. So we have the Broca's area, which produces written words, the parieto-temporal area, which it analyzes written words, and the occipito-temporal area, which identifies written words. And then we also have the cerebellum. So the cerebellum is responsible for making skills automatic, regardless of whichever skill it is. So it might be that you're learning to read and write. It might be that you're learning to drive a car, new dance steps, whatever it is. What happens is that the cerebellum builds the neural pathways within the brain. But as long as there is activity in the brain, the cerebellum can build these efficiently. And it's a bit like building a bridge on both sides. If you imagine over time and practice, these neural pathways will meet in the middle, they will fuse, and they will become completely automatic. So you don't have to think about that skill any longer. So you don't have to think about, you know, what letter comes after which in the alphabet. You don't have to think about the next dance steps. You can multitask while you're driving a car because you know which gear to use and which pedal to use and so on. And so it's the cerebellum that is responsible for making these completely automatic. When we think about literacy skills, however, we know that in typical readers, these three areas of the brain, in a normal traditional way of teaching literacy, that they are active and the cerebellum is quite happily building the neural pathways, and eventually that literacy skill is completely automatic. But with dyslexics, however, when they are learning this skill, there is less activity on the left side of the brain. And so consequently, the cerebellum doesn't recognize there is as much activity and it doesn't build the neural pathways efficiently. And that's one of the reasons why every dyslexic has their own unique experience, because some will have been exposed to that multisensory way of teaching more than others. A multisensory way of teaching will activate all of these different areas independently, creating those busy activities in the brain so the cerebellum can recognize it. So this is just the literacy side of what dyslexia is, but they also have a challenge with memory. So we all have a memory shelf at the front of our brains, and those who are non-dyslexic can typically hold on to maybe 7 or 8 books on their shelf before they start to, if you add on too many, it starts to overload and it tips and they start to slide off. Dyslexics, however, may only be able to have room for maybe 2 or 3 books. And so if you add on too many, it starts to slide off really quickly, and they become overwhelmed. Different books have different weights, however. So imagery is a lot easier to hold on to the books on the shelf. They're a lot lighter, so you can hold on to more. And what I mean by that is, for example, if you're given directions, you might say turn left at the post office, go past the big tree with the lights on it, and then turn right at the telephone box. Giving those kind of images in for them to hold on to is a lot easier for those with dyslexia rather than just verbal or text information. So that is the memory shelf. They also have a challenge with information processing. So we know that we've got our left and right hemispheres of the brain. And like you saw in the video, that blue dot is like what I describe as the filing cabinet of knowledge behind our left ear. And, you know, if you're left brain dominant, you can find that information in your filing cabinet of knowledge super fast in milliseconds. And it's very much like driving down a motorway with no other cars on there. There is no congestion at all, and you can be super fast at finding it. If you're right brain dominant, however, you've got a longer journey to take. And it's a little bit like driving down the scenic route. Now, it's not to say that you're not going to find the information in your filing cabinet of knowledge. It just takes a little bit longer to find it. And so that's information processing is something that you might find that your dyslexic colleagues may find a challenge with. And it's not to say that we don't need a really good mix of left and right brainers. We do, we really do. We have these logical thinkers who are very quick to be able to process information. But being right brain dominant can have some fantastic benefits too. They have that kind of creativity. They tend to excel in things like creative tasks, art, music, writing, that kind of thing. They have a very good intuition. They often rely on their gut feelings to be able to make decisions. They have a really good emotional awareness as well. Often, you'll find that a lot of carers are, might be dyslexic. They are very empathetic. They may have very good visual spatial skills and includes that ability to recognize those patterns and shapes, those spatial relationships. Very good in things like architecture, engineering, sports. That holistic thinking as well. They tend to see the big picture and understand how different parts fit together. Very good at strategic planning and complex problem solving. And they're very flexible often. They are adaptable and open to new experiences. They can lead to being very dynamic and having a very flexible approach to life. So XERA is under the umbrella of neurodiversity. It's a relatively new term. I have sent in the resources a detailed compilation from our website about the different neurodiverse conditions, but I'll just touch on the more common ones. We use the term neurodiverse to help promote the view that our neurological differences are to be recognised and respected the same way as any other human variation, how tall you are, what the colour of your hair is, and so on. And it's used to counter any negative social connotations that might still exist. And though consequently what happens is it will make it easier for people of all neurotypes to contribute to the world just as they are. You don't have to conform to be typical. And so we are trying to use it as an inclusive way of encouraging neurodiverse individuals to be exactly just as they are without having to conform to other social restraints. So neurodiverse conditions often share these overlapping issues, which it can make diagnosis and support a little bit more complex. And as you can see, we have a range of conditions in front of you on the screen. It's important to consider the language as well, though. The word disorder has quite a negative connotation, and it reflects that medical origin of the diagnosis. What you may notice as time goes on is that kind of language might change. It might be that you, instead of the word disorder, you might see the word condition or difference, because we want to make it a more positive way of explaining the neurodiverse individual. But what you will notice is that they will have these common issues. It might be that they have a difficulty with executive functioning. And again, it's a cluster of these, not all of them. It might be that they have a difficulty with planning and organizing or managing time, particularly with ADHD or autism. They may have sensitivity issues. They might experience a heightened or a reduced sensitivity to those kind of sensory stimuli. It might be light or sound or touch. Social communication challenges. They may find it difficult to understand social cues, maintaining conversations, and forming relationships. It could have an impact on their anxiety and mental health. And unfortunately, they frequently co-occur with these neurodiverse conditions because they feel they need to fit in instead of moving into an inclusive organization. It creates that stress for our neurodiverse individuals. And of course, they may have learning difficulties with their challenges with their reading, their writing, perhaps maths. They may have a co-occurring difficulty with dyscalculia, for example. Motor coordination difficulties, their fine and gross motor skills, particularly with dyspraxia. Attention and focus problems. They may struggle with maintaining attention and focus, very prevalent in ADHD and autism and dyslexia. With ADHD in particular, what they're trying to do is they notice everything that is around them, and they try and focus on every single thing altogether, which is why they flit from one thing to another so much, because they want to pay attention to everything. So that's these kind of overlapping issues. They highlight the importance of that really comprehensive and supportive intervention that we need for our colleagues. I just want you to have a look at this cartoon momentarily. It highlights that we all have different strengths and different challenges. There's a gentleman at the front saying for a first selection, everybody has to take the same exam. Please climb that tree. And this is what we do, isn't it, when we're trying to get qualifications through the school system. If you're going for a promotion or an interview, we all have to do the same. But it acknowledges and highlights that sometimes we put unfair expectations upon us and our colleagues. But it also conveys the need to act and to innovate and to think outside the box to make sure that we get the best out of our colleagues and applicants so that everybody can perform within their best role. And we need to also make sure that there are practical responses to make sure that you provide that inclusive and accessible environment. It helps us to become diverse and flexible. And so in this instance, if the gentleman at the front was to say, if you want to show me your strengths in either climbing the tree or swimming in the lake, you'll be able then to find the best strengths out of all of those individuals who are in the line. I just want to touch on the emotional toil of being dyslexic, because this is something that can be misunderstood. Living with dyslexia can be emotionally challenging, and those dyslexic individuals experience a range of emotions, from confusion and frustration to anxiety and low self-esteem. And so these are some of the common emotional impacts. They may be have a confusion and bewilderment. They often struggle. They often feel confused when they struggle with tasks that seem or appear to be easy for everybody else. And so it can lead to frustration and feelings of self-doubt. They may feel embarrassment and shame. And because struggling with reading and writing can cause embarrassment because of the reactions of other people. It's assumed in society that if you're unable to read and write, you're unintelligent, and that is not the case, and we need to change that narrative. And so consequently, it can affect their self-esteem, it can lead to a sense of inadequacy. All of this might lead to that lack of confidence. And if they've had those repeated difficulties and setbacks, it can really erode their confidence. They might doubt their own abilities. it might impact their performance in their work. It might be that it creates that frustration and anger, because the constant struggle to lead can lead to that frustration. Depending on the individual's personality, it might turn to anger, and it can be directed inward, or outward. Inward might lead to leading to self-blame and possibly self-harm, but outward as well, their reactions to other people within their closest circles. It might lead to anxiety and fear. And anxiety is a common emotional response, especially in situations involving any kind of reading or writing or memory or processing. It can lead to these kind of avoidance behaviors, and it could further impact on their learning, their social interactions, and it might, have a negative impact on their own thought processes for promotion. Of course, it might also lead to that despondency and depression. Those persistent challenges and a sense of failure can lead to feelings of hopelessness and depression. It's important to note, however, that with proper support and strategies, these individuals with dyslexia can overcome these emotional challenges. And what I would encourage you to do is, if this resonates with you or with your colleagues, is build that supporting environment, seek help from professionals, focus on strengths, and hopefully that will be able to foster some resilience and provide that positive outlook. If you're focusing on the strengths of that individual and not but putting the support in for those things that they struggle with. Which leads me beautifully into working in a supportive environment. This is really important, not just for dyslexia, but for all neurodiverse individuals. I love this quote. It says, by treating dyslexia as a drawback, employers often miss out on a talent pool with unique skills that would be beneficial to any work environment. And we need to consider the medical model versus the social model of disabilities. Now, many dyslexic individuals don't consider themselves to be disabled. However, and that's because they don't have a physical or a mental disability, but they are protected. It's a protected characteristic under the Equality Act of 2010. And when we think about that, that medical model of the disability or the dyslexia, it would involve that individual having to adjust to their environment. They need to adapt their own strategies, which might snowball into that anxiety and poor performance. However, if we have that social model of disability where reasonable adjustments within the organisation are already set as standard so that everybody is able to access that support system, then the individual will be able to move into that environment and just work as they would be able to, with that supportive that support network around them. And use the dyslexic individuals, you use your dyslexic colleagues to come up with these support systems and finding these solutions together. It's a hidden disability. It's not obvious. We don't like to use that word disability, but under the Equality Act, it's those characteristics that are protected. And so because it's hidden, you wouldn't assume, just by looking at somebody that somebody could be dyslexic. Okay. And so we need to be able to have that inclusive approach to your work environment. And of course, it's a win-win. So a supportive environment it has numerous positive impacts within an organization. These are some of the key benefits. So you increase employee retention. It's an expensive business having to lose staff and having to recruit again and again. And so these dyslexic employees are more likely to stay with a company if they feel supported and valued. It reduces that turnover rate of staff, the associated costs that go along with recruiting and training new staff as well. It gives an enhanced productivity. And when your employees and your colleagues feel supported, they are more motivated, they are more engaged. It leads to that higher productivity levels as well. And if you have that positive work environment, it also reduces absenteeism and those interruptions in the workflow as well. It can have improved job satisfaction. If you provide that supportive environment, it really fosters that job satisfaction. It leads then to better performance, to a much more committed workforce, feeling that feeling of being inclusive and included within all of the systems without having to, put a red flag saying this person's dyslexic, they have to use speech to text. If it's available for everybody, then there is no nobody is singled out because of any kind of challenges. Improved job satisfaction. A supportive environment fosters job satisfaction, leads to better performance and more committed workforce. It also leads to innovation and creativity. That inclusivity and support really encourages those diverse perspectives and ideas. It drives innovation, creates those problem-solving ideas. They don't fear to put some new things on the table, which could be money saving, within the organization. It could be enhanced performance. It might be something that makes things a little bit quicker, and so on. So if you're creating this supportive environment, there will be a safe space to be able to raise any concerns or raise any ideas for the future. And then consequently, they will have a better organizational performance. That supportive work environment really contributes to that overall organization performance. And it enhances that learning agility and fosters a culture of continuous improvement. And that positive workplace culture, it helps to build a positive workplace culture, which really attracts then the top talent. And then consequently, it enhances the organization's reputation. And so that creative support environment, it's a win-win for both the employees and the organization. It will lead to really engaged, productive, and innovative workforce. Ultimately, it will drive the organization's success. And so I want to kind of give you a question that if you are within your organization and with a group of colleagues, I'm going to give you that question. How does your current workplace support its employees in dyslexic or in the neurodiverse, under the neurodiverse umbrella? So I'm hoping this is going to kind of springboard some fantastic conversations within your organization. So what are the inclusive strategies? For working in a supportive environment, it really can make a significant difference for those with dyslexia. And so what I've come up with is some strategies and tips that can really help to create that inclusive workplace. The first one is open communication. It's really important to have open lines of communication with the employer and the colleagues, your colleagues as well. If you let them know about your dyslexia, it will help them to understand what your needs are and then provide that appropriate support. Now, I know I'm talking to many, many people who are dyslexic adults that you may have undergone some very negative experiences. And so that is the thing that is putting you off disclosing your dyslexia. However, to be able to move forward, we need to promote these safe spaces to be open and honest. If you are able to do that using assistive technologies and utilizing tools and software that is designed for you with things like reading and writing and organization. And I'm thinking things like, for emails or reports using things like Grammarly, possibly using the text-to-speech functions that are integral in things like Microsoft or Google Docs or Apple Macs, those kind of things. All of these kind of things are generally integral these days, providing you've got an up-to-date version. And it can be really helpful, and encouraging people to use that because it can be quicker than typing or writing. And so looking at assistive technology is it's not cheating. Some people have said to me that's cheating. It's not. It's using the digital era that we're in now for your benefit. Just as a side note to that, I've helped to put together a free assistive technology course that the BDA have provided. You just need to have a look at the website and search for that link. And it just gives you an overview of what kind of assistive technology is out there at the moment, because it shifts and changes so quickly. And we're hoping to keep that updated regularly. So other strategies is possibly having flexible work arrangements. If possible, negotiate a flexible working hours or even remote work options. And by doing this, it reduces that stress. It allows you to work in an environment where you feel much more comfortable. And of course, everybody's job description is unique to them. So it's about finding something that will help you. But I'm thinking possibly, if you have to hot desk, try not to hot desk, allow one desk for that one individual. If you work better in the morning and in the evening, have flexible shift patterns, maybe a split shift. If you're working better in the morning, or maybe in the afternoon you do practical activities instead of the administration. Allowing for working from home if it's a quieter place. And so it just helps to reduce that stress and putting them in an environment where they are able to be 100% all of the time. Things like training and workshops, things like what you're doing today, encouraging your workplace, your colleagues to offer those training sessions on dyslexia awareness. It can also foster a much more understanding and supportive culture. My job is to deliver dyslexia awareness training, and I can do that either virtually or face-to-face. So if you are thinking about doing something like that, please do get in touch via the website. And we can book that in. I'd love to come and meet you and your colleagues. Organizational tools. We know that there are these three areas that dyslexics find really difficult. So the reading of, the literacy and the memory and the organization. And so using digital planners and calendars, or maybe a task management app, it can really keep track of deadlines and tasks. It might be that you're able to break things down into very much smaller manageable steps that would be really helpful. What you might find is within your team is that one person who loves to organize everybody else. I've met a couple of people along my career who love to do that, and they're very, very good at keeping everybody up to date and sending digital reminders and color coding different projects and individuals and so on. And so it might be that you find maybe the Microsoft To Do app that is fantastic, and you could be able to use that for all of your team. Create a support network. Connect with other support groups. We have local dyslexia associations up and down the country that you might want to connect with. Or it might be that you want to create your own support community within your organization because you have a very large organization. And sharing experiences and strategies with others can be really empowering. And it just gives you that feeling of belonging as well. Positive reinforcement, focus on your strengths, celebrate your achievements, and having that positive reinforcement from colleagues and your supervisors as well can also boost your confidence and your motivation. It might be that you require professional support, and so seek support from maybe a career coach who specializes in working with those with dyslexia, and it might be that you ask for an access to work assessment, and what that will do, will provide that tailored strategy and support. But ultimately, creating that supportive environment is collaborative. It's a collaborative effort, isn't it? And so, by advocating for your needs and utilizing all of the available resources to you, you can really thrive within your own workplace. And again, what I want to do is give you something to talk about after today's webinar to springboard those conversations. How has your experience been so far within your current work environment? Could it be improved? Is it already really very good? And so it's not just about this 1 hour. I'm hoping that these conversations will continue for a little while. So just to recap then, let your employer know about your dyslexia, utilize assistive technology in the workplace, negotiate flexible working hours if you need them, encourage dyslexia workshops, use planners, break tasks into small steps, give yourself that brain break if you really need it. Connect with local community and dyslexia groups. Focus on your strengths, that is really important. And seek out help if you need to. The kind of things that you can use for all of these different sections. So you've got reading, writing, memory, unorganization, and spelling and grammar. What you will notice here, this is TTS is text to speech. So use the integral systems that you've got already. And audiobooks, it might be that you prefer to listen to a report if you have to read something, if it's very text dense. Try and convert it to a document that will read it aloud. Speech to text is this one. Speech to text can be quicker and much more efficient for dyslexics to be able to get what's going on in their head onto a digital format. Use things like word prediction, mind mapping software. Spelling and grammar, spell checkers and grammar softwares. There's a couple that you can use that I use. I use Grammarly. I've also used Ginger. There's another one called Quillbot that you can have a look at. Most of them have a free version. You might want to upgrade it for the whole of the organization. And for memory and organization, note-taking software, there's lots of them on the marketplace at the moment. There's a couple that I can think of there's one called Glean. It listens to your meetings or your training or your learning. It imports a audio clip, it converts it into text. You're able to timestamp different notes and so on. Using AI, it will convert it into a summary as well. So there's lots of functionality within those. There's another one called Captioned and Evernote, I think, as well. But there's things like mind mapping software that will help you to get everything, all the ideas out of your head onto the page, and then you can just dump everything, reorganize it, export it as a document. So all of these different kinds of things. And digital organizers, we've kind of touched on that as well. You can have a team organizer if that is helpful. I'm just conscious of time, so I'm just going to whiz through how the BDA can help. And I've mentioned quite a few of them already today, but our website is our greatest resource. And if you do need assistance with the content, we do have an accessibility function here. If you click on that icon, you're able then to change the background, the font, have it read aloud, and so on. Please do get in touch with us if you need us. This is our helpline telephone number if you would like to talk to somebody. We have volunteers who help to operate this helpline who are experts in the field. So you would always have somebody who understands your experiences. Alternatively, you might want to email us or get in touch via the social media platforms. And again, these are operated by our experts. The quality mark is a really positive statement that you might want to look into if you're considering having this real holistic way of supporting your neurodiverse and dyslexic individuals. Have a think about the BDA Dyslexia Friendly Quality Mark. It's a real pull for those people who really are seeking out a really supportive environment to work in. And there are 3 stages for organisations. We've got bronze, silver, and gold. And most organisations come in at the bronze or the silver because they're already having that supportive environment. It might be that you have, I've piqued a little bit of interest in wanting to know a little bit more about dyslexia. If you want to learn about completing a workplace needs assessment course, for example, so you've got somebody in-house. It might be that you need to learn a little bit more about dyslexia, so you just want to do the fundamentals, but we have lots of training available. And that just leads me quite nicely to questions from everybody out there, Claudia.
All right, Amanda. Yes. If anyone has any more questions, please do use the Q&A box. We have a question, Amanda. How do you support adults who believe they have dyslexia but come from the generation where they have not been given strategies to manage and are dismissive about the help?
You see, that is really difficult because what they've done is they've listened to all of the messages all through their life and they now believe they have this kind of learned helplessness that they're not able to change themselves. If you provide that wide range support, not just for that individual, but for everybody, and include them in that, then hopefully they're going to be able to change that way of thinking about their own dyslexia. Give them examples and provide that support group. And maybe a mentor who has already been able to use any of these kind of strategies to make positive changes, and get them to try and talk to each other. The easy thing is to talk about their own experiences. So I would start off with that at the beginning. Once you start making a little bit of headway with what they believe that they can achieve, that's when you can start to implement the changes. But unfortunately, society is against us in the past few decades. We've had these messages to say that being dyslexic, you won't be able to achieve anything. But we know now, we've got the scientific backing behind us to know that they can achieve, and they are able to change and to support themselves. It's a really broad ranging question, that one.
It is. I thought I'd ask because there's a few of those actually. This is an interesting one, and I knew it would come up at some point. Can AI help with dyslexia, and how best can it be used? It's also a big question.
It is, and AI can massively help. It really reduces the burden of having to write reports. What you've got to be careful with organisations is the confidentiality of it as well, because with AI, what it does is it kind of remembers and it uses that information for everybody. So if you are going to use it for internal organizations, be mindful of that GDPR aspect of it. But using AI is a huge leap for support for individuals with dyslexia. What you can do, even if it's just sending an email to your doctor's surgery, you can just talk into AI. I use Copilot quite a lot. If you just talk into it and say, send me an email to the doctor, I need to ask if I can have an appointment on Tuesday at 2 o'clock, and it will write it all out for you. Using AI to, write a blog, for example, if that is something that they are interested in, it really reduces that burden of having to find the words. That's the bit that's really difficult for our dyslexic adults.
Thank you. Going on to another question, a little bit of a tricky one. How to deal with an employer who constantly micromanages you because of typos or grammar due to dyslexia?
Ask for something like Grammarly. Easy. Or something that is compatible with your organization. And what you've got to remember is these kind of personalities, they like things to be perfect. But educate them as well on what dyslexia is and how it affects. But use assistive technology. Grammarly is an easy fix for that one.
Yeah, there's a lot of assistive technology that can help with something like that, isn't there?
Definitely.
Yeah. How do you help those who are dyslexic but not first language speakers?
Oh, right. Okay. So you can be dyslexic and English as a second language. And I know of this does need a little bit of education going back to basics, really. I know of there's a lady called Danielle, can't remember her surname now, but she runs a company called Soft English, and that helps to teach those people English and with dyslexia. That's a very, very niche area. So have a look at Soft English. That will help them with their overall English. There's another company called the Bell Foundation that will have lots of resources. The Bell Foundation help predominantly school children who English is their second language. But have a look at those. They will have some kind of resources, I'm sure, for something that might be relevant to what you might be struggling with. So those two particularly.
Perfect. Thank you, Matt. We got lots of questions coming in, and I'm just trying. Some of them are very similar. So I keep getting asked about, is there a way that I can get tested for dyslexia as an adult? We've had a lot of that come in today. Can you give a very quick guidance on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Get in touch with the BDA's website. We have a bank of registered assessors who have what we do is we make sure that they have all of the correct the correct qualifications and the insurance and the CPD and all the rest of it. It's easy to get in touch and request somebody in your local area. So please do. It's so worthwhile getting a dyslexia assessment, even if you're an adult, because then you will be able to understand yourself, but also get the right support in your work environment.
Thanks so much, Amanda. We've got lots of questions, but please do look at our website. A lot of those questions can be at least answered or signposted on our website. So do, even if you just search a specific word, it should come up on our website. So please have a look at that. Also, just don't forget we've got our helpline, who would be able to also support with specific questions, or if you're looking for something specific. So do have a look at our helpline. Thank you so much, Amanda.
You're
It's been
welcome,
a
everyone.
very, very useful session, and a lot of people are saying the same thing as they say goodbye. And as mentioned at the beginning, we do have more free webinars that may interest you on our YouTube channel. So do keep an eye on our website for more webinars in 2025. And thanks for joining us this afternoon.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, Amanda. Bye,
Thanks,
everybody.
Claudia. Bye now, everyone.